أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله ورضي الله تعالى عن سادة التابعين وعلماء العاملين وأئمة الأربعة المجتهدين ومقلديهم إلى يوم الدين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, this is lesson number 44 in our Akhdari class. Akhdari, the Mukhtasar al-Akhdari, the summary composed by Imam al-Akhdari regarding the acts of worship in the Maliki school. Alhamdulillah. We just finished the part where the Imam talks about how to correct your prayers, more specifically the sujood sahwi, or the prostration of forgetfulness, how to do it, when to do it, etc. We're actually still in that section, except now in this section, he's talking about how to perform it in the Naafilah salat. The Naafilah salat is translated as optional or meritorious. In other words, any salat other than the fard salat. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We know the other prayers other than the mandatory or the obligatory salat, they all vary in their degree of merit. But normally when the scholars in the school refer to Naafilah salat, they mean aqsal fard, or the opposite of the fard salats. So we mentioned this before as well, when even those sunnah salats that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam never left off, like witr and duha, and like the Eid prayers, those highly recommended sunnah, normally when the scholars are talking about the Naafilah salat, they are including those prayers, except when they note it, and we came across some examples of that earlier. In any case, قال المؤلف رحمه الله والسهو في النافلة كالسهو في الفريضة إلا في ستة مسائل. He said, forgetfulness, or the prostration of forgetfulness in the Naafilah salat, is the same, or it's like the forgetfulness in the fard salat, except in 6 issues or 6 cases or 6 situations. He said, al-Fatihati wa surati wa sirra wal jahri wa ziyadati rak'atin wa nisyani ba'da al-arkani in tala faman nasiya al-Fatihata fi al-nafilati wa تذكري بعد الركوع فماد وسجد قبل السلام بخلاف الفريضة فإنه يلغي تلك الركعة ويزيد أخرى ويتمادى ويكون سجوده كما ذكرنا في طريق سجودي. He said, and he mentions the 6 issues that is different with regards to forgetfulness in the Naafilah salat as opposed to the fard salat. He says al-Fatiha, and he's going to explain the surah, the silent and audible recitation, and the addition of a rakat, and 6, forgetting some of the arkan, the pillars of the prayer, if a long time is missed. Then he said, whoever forgets the Fatiha in Naafilah and remembers after going into ruku, he continues and repairs this with the sujood before the salam, which is called a qabli, as opposed to the fard salat, where he would cancel out the rakat, add another rakat, and continue. His sujood will be according to what we have already mentioned about the person who forgot a sujood. So, if you remember, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Isa, Malika, Hakeem, and Baron, alhamdulillah. If you remember, previously, we said that if a person forgets Al-Fatiha and he's already going into another rakat, that there's no way to make that up. So he will have to cancel out that rakat and add another rakat, and then do a ba'di, prostration after the salam, if you remember that. The difference here is in a Naafilah salat, is that if he forgets Al-Fatiha and he moves into another rakat, he doesn't have to cancel out the rakat. He will do qabli. He will do a prostration before the forgetfulness. Prostration of forgetfulness before the salam. And then he continues, he says, وَمَنْ نَسِيَ سُورَةَ أَوْ الْجَهْرَ أَوْ السِّرَّ فِي النَّافِلَةِ وتذكر بعد الركوع تمادى ولا سجود عليه بخلاف الفريضة. He said, whoever forgets the surah, the audible or the silent recitation, and what he means by surah is actually, the surah that you recite after Al-Fatiha in the first two rakats, right? Or he forgets the audible or the silent. In other words, if a prayer is an audible salat like Subha, Maghrib, or Isha, and he recites silently, or if the salat is a silent salat like Dhuhr, Asr, and he recites audibly, and he said, and he remembers after the ruku, he continues, and there is no sujood required of him as opposed to the fard prayers. So if you remember, if a person in the fard prayers were to recite audibly in a silent salat, he would do a ba'di because it's considered an addition. And if a person in the audible salat forgot and was reciting silently, it will be treated as a deficiency, and so he would do a qabli. Well, in the Naafilah salat, none of that applies, and he's not obliged to do the sajda sahwi, or the prostration of forgetfulness. And Malika asked, why is there a difference? Because in the obligatory prayers, certain things are an obligation in those prayers. They are pillars of the prayer, as opposed to Naafilah or voluntary salat. The obligations aren't the same. I'll give you an example. Like if you remember, if you go back to the fard of salat, one of the fards of the salat is to stand when you're reciting the Quran. To stand. In other words, when the position that we call qiyam, when you're reciting Fatiha and the additional surah, the obligation of the obligatory salat is to stand while you're reciting that. Unless, of course, you physically can't do it. In this book, we already covered that section, right? Well, it's not the same with the Naafilah salat. Like, for example, you can sit in a Naafilah salat without, for example, like being a medical necessity, even though you lose some reward if you just do it just to do it. But, it's not going to invalidate the prayer as opposed to a fard salat. And this is why, for example, you find hadith where the Prophet ﷺ is praying on his riding beast, on his horse or his camel or something like that. And this is another example why fiqh is so important, because some people will ignorantly take that hadith and say that they can make salat in a car, the fard salat in the car. And they don't understand that that hadith was a Naafilah salat, where standing isn't an obligation. You understand? So I remember a long time ago, before I knew any of this, I was with my imam, and we were traveling to Canada, driving. And it was early in the morning, and it was time for subha. And we stopped at a rest stop, and it was freezing cold. It was the winter. It was freezing cold. So we went into the rest stop, we made wudu, and then we got back in the car and made the sunnah or the Naafilah rakats, which in our school we call fajr, right? And then we got out of the car and we made subha normally, standing up in the freezing cold. The reason why we prayed the optional prayers or the Naafilah salat in the car sitting down, because it was freezing cold. It was like below zero with the heat on. So we had the heat on blast, praying our Naafilah, our optional prayers, a sunnah prayer that the Prophet ﷺ never left off, right? But it's nevertheless a Naafilah prayer. So it's not an obligation. It's not a pillar of the salat to stand in it, right? But then when it came to the fard prayer or the mandatory prayer, we got out of the car, out of the nice toasty heat, and prayed on that freezing cold below zero weather. Alhamdulillah. So that's why certain things that are a pillar of the pillars or fara'id of the prayers are only pillars or obligations, in the mandatory prayer. Whereas, in a mandatory prayer, if you leave off those things without correcting it or rectifying it properly, your whole prayer is invalid by leaving off one of those things. But with many of those things, the same is not the case in the optional prayers. I was confused by what he meant, surah, trying to listen to Rami's recorded commentary on my own. His commentary is good too, by the way. But a lot of times I refresh before I do these classes by listening to his commentary. So it's a good commentary. But we mentioned before, surah is always referred to, at least in this text, the surah or the additional surah is referring to whatever you recite after Fatiha in the first two rakats of the salat, even if it's not technically an entire surah, even if it's only one ayat, but is referred to as surah. Wa alaikum salam, Imad. Imagine how honored those riding animals felt when the best of creation, remembering his Lord, Tabarak wa Ta'ala, on them. Indeed, indeed. SubhanAllah, I never knew this. What if you're in a 13-hour flight, have to sit, or is it just us and Maliki Fiqh? In a 13-hour flight, if you remember, I know you came in the middle of the class, but one of the things that our school emphasizes is that many of the conditions, the prerequisites of the prayer that have to be in place even before the prayer comes in, or even some of the things that the pillars of the prayer. If there's no way you can do them, and the prayer is going to, the time of the prayer is going to leave, then you have to do it, as long as you catch the prayer within its time. And that's one of the things in our school, the time of the prayer trumps even some of the prerequisites when there's no way possible to fulfill them. And we gave extreme yet real examples. Like, for example, someone in prison in solitary confinement, and for whatever reason, whether the police, the COs are messing with him, or this is really his situation, and they put him in solitary confinement. They take his clothes, they take his bed sheets. He's in the cell butt naked, but he's Muslim, and the time for prayer comes in. And sometimes they put you on psych watch, or they lie on you and put you on psych watch just so they can deprive you of your clothing and your bed sheets and all that. So you be in your cell butt naked with nothing, right? But you're Muslim. And it's time for prayer. And maybe you're in the cell, you can't determine which way the Qibla is. And in this case, you have nothing to cover yourself with. And so all of these things are prerequisites of the Salah. So in our school, you wouldn't say, well, oh, I don't have to, I can't fulfill the prerequisites, so I'm just going to miss the prayer until I'm able to later make it up and fulfill the prerequisites. No, you have to pray in that extreme example that I'm giving you, buck naked, not sure if you're even facing the Qibla or not, right? And I think we even went to the extreme where they shut off the water in your cell. You can't even make wudu, and there's no dust, right? There's nothing. You would still have to make wudu, you would still have to make salah in the time without purification, without covering your aura, without even facing the Qibla or being sure that you're facing the Qibla. And so in our school, the prayer time, awqat salat, the time of the prayers, that takes precedence over any of the other prerequisites. So if the time of the prayer is in, but you can't figure out which way is the Qibla, you don't have no clothes, you can't borrow no clothes, you can't make wudu, there's no water, there's no appropriate surface to make tayammum on, all of these things that have to be in place before you enter the salat, you would still have to make salat in the time. So it's important to understand that principle. And again, I don't know about other schools, but this is the way it is in our school. ومن قام إلى ثالثة في النافلة فإن تذكر قبل عقد الركوع رجع سجد بعد الصلاة. He said, whoever stands for a third rakat in a Naafilah salat and remembers before going to ruku should return to sitting and do the sujood after the salam. So what he's saying is, in our school, I know the Hanafis are a little different, but in our school, every Naafilah salat is 2 rakats. Like for example, I think the Hanafis in Witr, right? Their witr looks a lot like our Maghrib, right? It's 3 rakats without no taslim after the second rakat, without any salam after the second rakat. But they make all 3 recitations, audible with an additional surah. In our school, when we make in witr, or shafi in witr, or the even and the odd, we would do the 2 rakats, salam out, and then stand up and make 1 rakat by itself, and then salam out, right? Well, let's say in this example, right, you're making shafi and witr, so he makes the second, he completes the second rakat, and he forgets and he stands for a third rakat, and he remembers before he go into ruku, I was supposed to salam out. He just stop where he's at and sit right back down, and then do the taslim, and then do a ba'di. In other words, he does the 2 prostrations after the salat. ومن أقدى 3 تمادى وزاد رابعة وسجد قبل السلام بخلاف الفريدة فإنه يرجع متى ما ذكر ويسجد بعد السلام. If he, however, has already gone to ruku, he continues and adds a fourth rakat, and then does the sujood before the salam. So in this scenario, right, the example we just gave, he's making Shafi and Witr, but he forgets to salam out after the second rakat. But now, instead of remembering before he goes into the ruku of his third rakat, now he remembers after the ruku of the third rakat. So now, instead of sitting straight back down and salaming out and then doing a ba'di, he's going to add a rakat. He's going to add a fourth rakat. And then he's going to do a qabli. He's going to do a prostration of forgetfulness before the salam. Why? Because in this situation, he's being treated as if he forgot the salam of what would have been the second rakat, and he forgot the takbiratul ihram, or the opening takbir of the first rakat or the third rakat, if you understand what I'm saying. And because it's not an obligatory salat, he can rectify corrupting or messing up those what would be obligations in the fard prayer. He can rectify those by just doing the prostration of forgetfulness. So in other words, if he remembers before the cutoff point, the line of demarcation in the rakat, in the cycle, which is always the ruku, right? He's supposed to salam out after the second rakat, but he didn't. He stood up, and in the third rakat, before the ruku, he remembers, he just sits back down, and he salams out and does a ba'di. And that's one scenario. The next scenario is he doesn't remember until after the ruku. So in that case, he's going to treat it as 4 rakats, but he forgot certain things. And so he's going to do, it's a deficiency. And so he's going to do a qabli. ومن نسي ركنا من النافلة كالركوع أو سجود ولم يتذكر حتى سلم وتعالى فلا إعادة عليه بخلاف الفريضة فإنه يعيدها أبدا. ومن قطع النافلة عامدا أو ترك منها ركعة أو سجدة عامدا أعادها أبدا. ومن تنحد في صلاته فلا شيء عليه إلا أن ينطق بحروف. He said, whoever forgets an obligatory element in the Naafilah prayers, such as ruku, sujood, or does not remember until he has said the salam, and a long time has passed, there will be no need for him to repeat it. This, again, is contrary to the fard salat, in which case he would always have to repeat it. Whoever intentionally cuts short his Naafilah or leaves out a rakat or a sajda deliberately must always repeat it. Whoever sighs in his salat has nothing against him unless he distinctly articulates a letter. If you remember the last section, we talked about these different scenarios where people would make other noises that wouldn't normally be part of the salat. And in some cases, if it was done amidan or intentionally, it would even invalidate his salat. But in this case, you see in the Naafilah salat, no, it is not the case. And we have to be careful about this, because sometimes, people, in their salat, they're thinking about a whole bunch of stuff. And sometimes you may have the misfortune or the fortune, depending on what your situation is, of praying behind someone. Maybe, for example, he prays for a long time. You was expecting Kuhu Allahu Ahad, and he's Alif Lam Mim, right? And you got to get somewhere. And so, you think it's cute by, And you making all these noises in the Fard Salah, you invalidating your Salah. It would be better for you if it's that pressing to just salam out and pray on your own or do something rather than invalidate your Salah. But you see, where he mentions here in the Naafilah Salah, whoever sighs in his Salah is nothing against him. Whereas in the Fard Salah, that would invalidate your Salah. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ya Farouk. Alhamdulillah. No problem. Alhamdulillah. That's one of the blessings of technology. If you're late or you miss it, you can always go back on Facebook or YouTube and watch it. You know, some people, when they do their videos on Facebook, they do it as a story and they don't add it to their timeline so that, you know, after a day or whenever your story expires, the video expires. We don't do our stuff like that, you know, so it's there. You know, we don't voluntarily delete any of our videos, inshallah. So if anyone has any questions in this section, now is a good time to ask. We almost finished the book, mashallah. One more section. You must be tired, man. He's out. I think the delay on the video today is about 45 seconds. So I'm waiting to see if any of you have any questions. And if not, I'll be getting ready for the Black Imams Roundtable, inshallah. Okay, we finished. You can go. I know you're tired. You worn out. Yeah. You work today?
Yeah.
MashaAllah.
I ain't on till Friday. Do we Good Friday, not Good Friday, but Easter. Not Easter, but my boss want me to work on Good Friday. That's Juma. I don't want to miss. You don't have nothing. I'm out to tell them I can't miss that day. We got something planned.
I can compose a letter for you if you want.
Okay.
Let me do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
They trying to.
When is Easter?
Next month.
Next month.
How much you been out?
Man, I don't know if they heard it, but you was groaning and everything on it.
Yeah, they might tell them now I work one Friday till 12:30. I'm good with that. I can go home, take a shower.
Yeah.
But I told them I can't. Y'all gotta. This is something that I really want. This is something I'm doing for me, and it's making me better. It's making me good. Everybody wanted me to get better now. Everybody like, I'm like, okay.
Don't worry, you straight. It's a religious obligation, and I'll give you a letter or match your letterhead and everything. That's no problem. With my contact information, if he has any problem. Yeah, go to sleep. Alhamdulillah, thank you for doing the class. Alhamdulillah, no, thank y'all for being in the class. You know, this stuff motivates me as well. We exchanging energy. It goes both ways. You know, alhamdulillah. Dhaifa, assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You said there were 6. Can you briefly repeat? Sure. In other words, the 6 things that he began this section with is still dealing with prostration and forgetfulness, but he's just specifying 6 differences or 6 areas where the same mistake, if you made the same mistake in Naafilah prayer, you wouldn't correct it the same way as if that same mistake happened in the Fard prayers. He said Al-Fatiha, number 1. Number 2, the surah. Number 3, the silent, in other words, the silent recitation. Number 4, the audible recitation. Number 5, the addition of a rakat. And number 6, forgetting some of the arkan or the pillars of prayer if a long time has passed. So those are the 6 things. and he mentioned the details, etc., in what we read. Alhamdulillah. It's definitely interesting. Every time I learn this and go over it, it's when I'm reading, I'm learning myself. It's not like the learning stopped after I learned that. I learn it again, especially with the area on prostration and forgetfulness, because he went in so much detail in this book. It's hard to catch it in 1 or 2 or 3 sittings. You have to keep going over and over it again. Oh yeah, definitely. And for me, I can't speak for anyone else. He said it's very needed. Understanding fiqh makes practicing much easier. For me, not only does it make it easier, for me, it helps in my khushu or my concentration. My prayer, my mind wanders less in my prayer. That's just for me. I can't speak for anyone else. Filled with barakah, alhamdulillah. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Kashif. Alhamdulillah. Sophia, Shukran Imam Naeem for these beautiful and precious reminders and lessons. May Allah forever reward you. I mean, but believe it or not, I think I told him privately. I know I mentioned it to some people privately, but some of the rewards for these classes goes to Imam Amin too. He's an excellent motivator. I made up my mind several months before I went to Gambia in November, the last time. And for several months before that, at least maybe about 4 or 5, maybe 6 months before that, I made up my mind. I said, we have to step it up on the classes. And I was just really thinking about here in the masjid, we have to step up not only just classes, like what I call hodgepodge classes, but exposing our people to traditional Islamic learning, meaning, starting with basic texts and, getting firmly rooted in that and then building and building and building upon it. And so I made my intention for that almost a year ago. But when I had this in mind, it was really for us here locally in the masjid. And so, but I think I tweaked and I think I changed my niyat a little bit. Either when I was in Gambia or right before I went, I said, okay, we got to do these things online as well, not just here in the masjid. So alhamdulillah. In my Umdatul Bayan class, that is really a closed class. They have a special blessing that they don't know about yet. They're gonna know in a few weeks, inshallah. Yeah, but alhamdulillah, Imam Amin is a great motivator. So, and so if y'all get any good for these classes, and if I'm getting any reward from it, part of that reward is going to Imam Amin. LOL, I think I'm more Maliki than Shafi. I'm twisted. Keep sweat. You are filling a great void, mashallah. And we intend to keep filling it, inshallah. Inshallah. This stuff is extremely important. When you look at what's been done to us and what's being done to us and what's being passed off as Islam to us, we don't have any choice. We do not have any choice. All of us have to take up the mantle of teaching. This is what Sheikh Uthman bin Fodio, Tagamadahu lahu bi rahmati, may Allah envelop him in his mercy. This is what he told his companions, his followers, his murids, his students. He said, if you learn the Fard Ain and now you moved on to your communal obligations, it is obligatory upon you to teach the individual obligations to others. He said, وَمَنْ عَلِمَ مَسْأَلَةً وَاحِدَةً فَهُوَ عَالِمٌ بِهَا. He said, whoever has learned a single case, a single issue, he is an alim, or the learned one, or a scholar in that one issue. And likewise, it is obligatory upon him to teach it to others. Like what we used to call, when I was younger growing up, each one teach one. Like everybody's involved in learning and teaching at the same time. No one's only a teacher and he stopped learning. And no one's only a learner or a student, but he's not teaching. Now, we all got some type of responsibility in teaching. We got families, we got wives, we got husbands, we got children. We have to teach, as long as we stay in our lane, as long as we don't, think because we learn, a basic book or Maliki Fiqh and not even memorized it. And as long as we don't think we mujtahids or we're scholars or anything like that. No, we just repeat what we learn from our teachers and just stay in our lane. That's why, my best friend, y'all can't see him here. I'm gonna use my right. My best friend right here that y'all can't see, he has a name. His first name is La, and his last name is Akhdari, which means I don't know. And he's my best friend, right? So, this is that's my mantra. That's my thing. Anyone who knows, who claims to know everything, he don't really know nothing, because he's not even he doesn't even realize that there's more knowledge out there that he doesn't know. He really thinks he has a percentage of knowledge, So, alhamdulillah. So it's always a pleasure, inshallah. So when we finish this text, we are going to go into another Maliki text, but we're going to restrict our, we're going to be talking about the fast of Ramadan. So we're going to go through another Maliki text, but it's going to be we're only going to cover the section on fasting. And the reason is obvious, because Ramadan is coming up, so we want our people to be right for the month of Ramadan. We don't want people to enter the month of Ramadan and then just invalidating stuff all day and invalidating your fast and not doing it right, inshallah. Normally, what we normally do here, we usually have like a big program. I don't think we did it last year. I'm not even sure if we did it the year before, but we usually do like a program, several hours, and we, cover all aspects of fasting and, the fiqh of it, the merits of it, the spirituality of it, and all that kind of stuff in one day. But I'm going to do it during this class time, during, our Maliki Fiqh time, inshallah. So inshallah, I will close out, inshallah, and I hope to see y'all on the Black Imams Roundtable on Masjid Muhammad of Atlantic City's platform. And may Allah bless all of you for joining us and participating in the class. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wastaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wal 'asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilu salihati wa tawassaw bil haqqi wa tawassaw bis sabr. Al-Fatiha. I'm in Pittsburgh, Malika. Which book? Actually, two. Umdatu Bayan and the Ashmawiyah. All right. Assalamu alaikum.